reality TV, unscripted, unpredictable moments that can turn into real disasters at any moment. These are some of the most disturbing and unsettling moments in reality TV history. By 2014, the show Cops had already been on the air for over 2 decades. It was one of the longest-running reality TV programs in American history. The show followed police officers in real time, showing everything from routine traffic stops and volatile domestic disputes to tense drug raids and, at times, life-threatening armed robberies. It was Tuesday night, August 26, 2014. The Cops production crew had been working alongside the Omaha Police Department since June. This was their final week in the city. That night, at around 9:20 p.m., Detective Darren Cunningham responded to a robbery in progress at a Wendy's fast food restaurant in downtown Omaha. He called for backup. 2 other officers arrived at the scene within 15 seconds. Inside one of these officers' cruiser were 2 members of the Cops crew, cameraman Michael Lee and sound technician Bryce Dion. When the officers entered the Wendy's, the Cops crew followed close behind. 2 officers went through the front, while one of them went to cover the emergency exit at the back. Inside the restaurant was a 32-year-old man named Cortez Washington. He was armed. As the officers moved in, Washington didn't seem to notice them at first. For a moment, it seemed like the situation might end without violence. But then, Washington stepped toward the front counter. When the officers identified themselves and ordered him to the ground, he didn't comply. Instead, he raised what appeared to be a handgun and fired. According to witnesses inside the Wendy's, Washington discharged his weapon directly at the officers. They saw the slide of his gun recoil. They heard at least 2 shots. In that instant, the standoff exploded into a shootout. The officers returned fire immediately. One of the officers took cover in a hallway near the restrooms, still firing, and another officer moved through the waiting aisle at the counter. Washington kept firing and moving even as he was being hit. Then Washington made a break for the exit. His weapon still pointed forward. Officers continued firing, desperately trying to bring him down before he could escape. In the chaos, sound technician Bryce Dion was tragically struck by police gunfire. He was standing inside an entrance hall near the front of the restaurant. He was holding his boom mic high above his head, capturing audio. Bryce was wearing a bulletproof vest, but was hit through one of the open areas. The bullet entered just under Dion's left armpit. He collapsed near his sound equipment. Medics rushed both him and Washington to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, but neither survived. Bryce was pronounced dead shortly after arriving, and Washington died in the parking lot from multiple gunshot wounds. After the incident, it became clear that the weapon Washington had used wasn't a real handgun. It was an airsoft pistol, designed to look like a real firearm, but only capable of firing plastic pellet bullets. In the moment, there was no way for officers to know that. Washington had a long criminal record. He was on parole in Missouri after serving part of a 7-year sentence for a previous robbery. And just 20 minutes before the Wendy's robbery, his girlfriend, 24-year-old Geneva Arias, had robbed a Little Caesars pizza shop using that same airsoft gun. Washington had driven her getaway car, and now it was supposed to be her turn to do the same for him. But when the gunfire started, she drove off. Arias was later arrested. While in jail awaiting trial, she assaulted a healthcare worker and fractured a jailer's hand. Eventually, she accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to up to 6 years in jail. After Bryce's death, his brother Trevor filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Omaha. The lawsuit claimed that there was a lack of coordination between police dispatch and the officers, and that the decision to bring a TV crew into a live robbery was negligent. When the footage was finally made public, it captured everything: the officers entering the restaurant, the eruption of gunfire, and Bryce Dion lying motionless near the wall. In 2009, the TV network VH1 was riding the wave of reality TV success. Shows like Rock of Love, Flavor of Love, and I Love Money were pulling in massive ratings. That became the foundation for a new VH1 series, Megan Wants a Millionaire. The show was exactly what the title promised. Megan Hauserman, a former contestant on Rock of Love, had made a comment during her time on the show. She didn't just want love, she wanted to be a trophy wife. So VH1 jumped at the idea, and they built a show around it. 17 wealthy single men were selected to compete for Meghan's affection. These weren't just any men. During casting, producers asked for bachelors with a net worth of over $1 million. Only 3 episodes of Meghan Wants a Millionaire aired before everything fell apart.
There's a big suitcase, so I took my middle finger and I just lifted it up, and sure enough, it looks like a body.
It's for sure a body?
Yeah.
On August 15th, 2009, a suitcase was discovered in a dumpster in Buena Park, California. Inside was the body of 28-year-old Jasmine Fiore, a swimsuit model who had recently moved from Las Vegas to the LA area. Her body had been mutilated. Her fingers and teeth had been removed. She had been strangled, stuffed into the suitcase, and dumped like trash. Investigators had almost no way to identify her until they used the serial number on her breast implants. The name that came back was Jasmine Fiore. She had been reported missing just hours earlier. As police began to piece together her final hours, a name quickly surfaced: Ryan Jenkins. Ryan was a contestant on Meghan Wants a Millionaire. He had presented himself as a successful real estate investor. What the audience didn't know was that, shortly after being eliminated from the show, Ryan Jenkins met Jasmine Fiore in Las Vegas. They got married just a few days later. Their marriage was fast and unstable. Reports of explosive arguments, jealousy, and even violence would soon come to light. By the time Fiore was murdered, she and Jenkins had already been separated and reunited more than once. On August 14th, the couple had checked into the L'Auberge Hotel in Del Mar, San Diego. They were in town for a charity poker tournament. Surveillance footage captured them leaving the Hilton together around 2:30 a.m. that night. They were later seen at the Ivy Hotel, a nightclub downtown. At 4:30 a.m., Jenkins returned to the L'Auberge Hotel alone, and Jasmine Fiore was never seen alive again. The next morning, Jenkins checked out of the hotel. That same evening, August 15th, he reported Fiore missing. He told police that after they returned from San Diego, she had left to run errands and never came back. On August 18th, Fiore's body was officially identified. The next day, VH1 quietly removed Meghan Wants a Millionaire from its lineup. By August 20th, Jenkins had been officially charged with the murder of Jasmine Fiore. That same day, VH1 cancelled the show entirely, not just pulled it off the air, but erased it. All mention of the show was scrubbed from the VH1 website. VH1 had already filmed Jenkins as a contestant on another show called I Love Money 3, and he had reportedly won. That season was also cancelled, never aired, and remains unreleased to this day. Meanwhile, the manhunt for Jenkins had begun. After reporting Fiore missing, Jenkins had left their shared penthouse in LA and driven to Nevada to retrieve his speedboat. When police contacted him on August 17th, he claimed he was in Utah, heading to Canada to deal with immigration issues. By August 19th, he was near the Canadian border. Witnesses spotted his BMW towing a boat. The next day, police found the BMW abandoned at a dockyard in Blaine, Washington. The engine was still warm, the boat trailer was empty. Authorities believe Jenkins had crossed into Canada by boat, possibly heading toward his family in British Columbia. By this point, he was no longer just a person of interest. He was a fugitive. On the evening of August 20th, Jenkins checked into the Thunderbird Motel in Hope, British Columbia. He was with a young blonde woman who paid cash for 3 nights. The woman later turned out to be his half-sister. Jenkins stayed alone in room 2. Witnesses say he looked exhausted and almost unrecognizable from the man they'd seen on TV. By August 23rd, 3 days after the arrest warrant had been issued, Jenkins was dead. The motel manager, after seeing no activity, entered the room. Jenkins had ended his time on Earth. There was only a document on his computer titled Last Will and Testament.
My heart and love for her was pure and powerful. It took over every thought and action. It inspired me, it drove me, and brought out the very best in me.
According to his father, Dan Jenkins, there was a lot of good in Ryan, but it had been corrupted.
Ryan was a fine young man. He was smart. He was kind. He was sweet. He was innocent. He went to Hollywood, and something down there in the last 4 months, including this girl, just destroyed him.
An investigation into the show's casting process revealed that Jenkins had a history of violence. In 2007, he had been convicted of assault after punching a woman in the head. He had also been charged with assaulting Fiore earlier in 2009 after an altercation in Las Vegas. None of this information was uncovered by VH1 or the production company, 51 Minds, during casting. They didn't run his name through the criminal database, and as a result, a man with a violent past walked onto a reality TV show. In early 2015, a new reality TV show was in production in Argentina, a show built on intense challenges with athletic competitors. The show was called Dropped. The concept of the show was simple but intense. Take a group of elite athletes, blindfold them, and drop them by a helicopter into a remote, unforgiving location. They were left stranded. No map to guide them, no food to sustain them, and no assistance of any kind, as the contestants had just 72 hours to find their way back to civilization, relying only on their survival instincts. This was filmed in the harsh wilderness of Patagonia, and later in the mountainous region of La Rioja, in northwest Argentina. The cast consisted of 7 French athletes and 1 Swiss. Among them were Olympic swimmer Camille Maffat, Olympic boxer Alexis Vestine, legendary yachtswoman Florence Artaud, and other celebrated names. Filming began in late February 2015 in the southernmost city of Ushuaia. By early March, they had completed the first episode, and 1 contestant, Sylvain Wiltord, had already been eliminated and returned home to France. The remaining competitors continued filming. Everything appeared to be going according to plan, until March 9th. That afternoon, the production prepared for an aerial sequence. 2 helicopters were set to lift off, each carrying a small group of passengers, contestants, and crew. At 5:15 p.m. local time, both helicopters took off at nearly the same time. They began climbing together, side by side, but then something went terribly wrong. Footage of the moment later showed one of the helicopters climbing faster than the other. It approached from below and struck the second helicopter in midair. Both aircraft fell from the sky and crashed to the ground, erupting in flames. All 10 people on board were killed instantly. The victims included 3 of France's most beloved athletes. Also killed were 2 Argentinian pilots and 5 members of the dropped production crew from Adventure Line Productions. The remaining contestants were reportedly waiting on the ground nearby when the collision happened. They witnessed it all. Within hours, the French presidential office confirmed the deaths and national mourning followed. Camille Maffat had won gold at the 2012 London Olympics. Florence Artaud was a pioneer of solo sailing and one of the first women to win major ocean races. Alexis Vestine had earned an Olympic bronze in boxing in Beijing 2008 and was still in his prime. Production on Dropped was immediately halted. TF1, the French channel that had commissioned the show, postponed its entire summer schedule. Later, the CEO of Adventure Line Productions confirmed that none of the footage would ever air. The show was effectively cancelled before a single episode had seen the light of day. While official investigations moved forward, the public reaction began to shift. Everyone was shocked by what had happened. The footage suggested one helicopter had climbed into the other's path, an error that should never have occurred. Questions began circulating about why the helicopters were flying so closely to each other. Reality TV was no longer just about drama. It had become a competition of extremes. On the morning of February 4th, 2006, tens of thousands of people gathered outside the PhilSports Stadium in Pasig, in the Philippines. Many had been waiting for hours. Some had camped outside for days. They had come for one reason: to be part of the live taping of a hit game show called Wowowee, broadcast on ABS-CBN, one of the country's largest networks. Wowowee was a variety show and game show all rolled into one. Its biggest draw was its giveaways: huge cash prizes, cars, even brand new Jeeps and taxis. For many in the crowd, these prizes were a chance to change their lives. This particular taping was special. It was the show's first anniversary, and the producers had promised even bigger rewards than usual. The top prize was 1 million pesos, life-changing money, especially for people who had little to nothing. And by the time the sun came up that morning, over 30,000 people had shown up hoping for a shot. But the stadium was not designed to hold a crowd that large. The football field had been set up as a holding area for people who couldn't fit inside the smaller indoor arena where the show was actually being filmed. Normally, Wowowee drew about 5,000 audience members per show, but this was 6 times that size. At 6 a.m., show organizers began handing out tickets. Many people in the crowd had already been waiting overnight. Word spread quickly that entrance was starting, and more people surged forward trying to get ahead in line. Those at the front were being let into the stadium, but for those farther back, tension was rising. People started pushing, then shoving. The crowd pressed closer together. Security guards, overwhelmed by the growing unrest, responded by shutting the gates. And that only made the crowd more desperate. As more people pushed forward, the barriers used to maintain the queue collapsed under pressure. The crowd surged and people began to fall. The entrance to the stadium was on a sloped driveway, a detail that would prove deadly. As the crowd surged downhill, it became harder for anyone to hold their footing. When the gates finally gave out under the pressure, it was chaos. People at the front collapsed, some from exhaustion and others were simply knocked off their feet. But the people behind them couldn't stop. They were being pushed by the thousands still trying to get in. The crush had begun. Within moments, the scene turned into a tragedy. People were screaming, some were trampled, others suffocated under the weight of the crowd pressing down on them. The slope of the driveway made it almost impossible to climb back up or get out. Security guards tried to stop the rush, but it was already too late. In total, 73 people were killed, and more than 800 were injured. Most of the victims were middle-aged women and elderly people. Rescue teams arrived as quickly as they could, but the damage was done. Initial reports mistakenly claimed as many as 88 people had died, but that number was later corrected due to double counting by overwhelmed rescue workers. Inside the stadium, the anniversary celebration never began. The show was immediately suspended and the network cancelled all plans for the event. In the days that followed, survivors told horrifying stories. Some said they heard people in the crowd yelling about bombs, false alarms that may have added to the panic. Others described being lifted off the ground by the force of the crowd and carried involuntarily toward the gates. In response, ABS-CBN offered to cover medical expenses and funeral costs for the victims and their families. The show's host gave a tearful apology on air, saying he had no idea that so many people were outside waiting that day. But critics argued that no one involved in the production should have been surprised by the overwhelming turnout. The show had built its entire brand on appealing to the poor, promising them a shot at life-changing prizes. The open waters of the Bering Sea are deadly, and for the fishermen of Deadliest Catch, the danger is real, every day. The Discovery Channel series premiered on April 12, 2005, and right away, it stood apart from most other reality shows. The show followed the real-life crab fishermen on the brutal waters of the coast of Alaska during the king crab and snow crab seasons. While commercial fishing is already considered one of the deadliest professions, Alaskan king crab fishing pushes the danger even further. Over 141 deaths per 100,000 workers. But that's just the average for commercial fishing. In Alaskan crab fishing, the numbers were even worse. As of 2005, the fatality rate on crab boats was over 300 per 100,000. Most of those deaths came from drowning or hypothermia. According to the show's pilot episode, during crab season, the death rate averaged out to nearly 1 fisherman per week, and nearly every crew member on board suffered some kind of injury, like broken bones, crushed fingers, deep cuts, or concussions. Filming Deadliest Catch didn't make any of that safer. In fact, it added more risk. Early camera crews had little to no experience on crab boats, They were used to controlled sets, not 30-foot waves, and decks that never stop moving. During Season 1, Sig Hansen, the seasoned captain of the vessel Northwestern, saved a cameraman's life. The man had unknowingly walked into the path of a swinging 900-pound crab pot. Sig shouted just in time to get him out of the way. Seconds later, the pot smashed into the space where the cameraman had been standing. On January 29, 2010, camera crews were filming aboard the vessel Cornelia Marie, and the crew was offloading crab at St. Paul Island. Captain Phil Harris, one of the most recognizable faces on the show, had mentioned feeling unusually tired. He went to his room to get some pain medicine. All of a sudden, he collapsed. Phil had suffered a massive stroke. Steve Ward, a second-year engineer on the boat, was the one who found him. He was conscious, but unable to move the left side of his body. Ward immediately got Phil's sons, Josh and Jake, and called for help. Paramedics arrived and airlifted him to Anchorage. But even as he lay there, unable to walk, Phil Harris insisted the cameras keep rolling. The footage of Phil's stroke and its aftermath would go on to become one of the darkest arcs the series had shown. Doctors performed emergency brain surgery to relieve pressure in his skull. He spent 11 days in the ICU with his sons, Josh and Jake, by his side. On February 9th, 2010, Phil Harris died from complications of the stroke. He was 53 years old. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to watch more content like this, consider this video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy. Stay safe, and until next time.